Everybody ready? Okay. I call this meeting to order, March 6, 2024, Council Workshop meeting, and we'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please rise.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First, I believe we have Councilor Roos by Zoom, so I'll need a motion to allow her to attend by Zoom. Is there such a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Councilor Stubbe. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Mellon. I'll call the question. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The motion passes. Jackie, welcome.
Hi guys, thanks so much. I'm grateful to be here by Zoom.
Okay, next up is citizens to be heard. So if there's anybody who would like to make any public comment on any matter of borough government, now is your opportunity to do so. If you're here with us, you would have to step up to the podium. Is there anybody who would like to make public comment in this very crowded room? Hi, Buck. How are you? Is that okay? Okay, I wasn't sure if that was a hand raised. And do we have anybody by Zoom? Okay. Next up, presentations. Bedford and East Streets traffic calming. Mark, I assume that's you.
Yes, this will be very quick. It's just an update on where things stand. So at the January 31st workshop meeting, Dawood Engineers was here, and they presented to council a menu of potential traffic calming concepts and bicycle lanes for the Bedford and East Street corridor. Borough staff, without Dawood, then attended the February 14th meeting of the Eastside Neighbors Association. There was a handful of folks there, and Jeff Berkston of our office went through the menu with the Eastside Neighbors, had a little handout for them, but not a PowerPoint presentation. And there was some general discussion about it, but it was mostly for information purposes. Staff intends to attend the next Eastside Neighbors Association meeting, which is April 10th, Wednesday, April 10th, the day before Council's regularly scheduled April meeting, to present to make a more formal presentation to Eastside Neighbors on the concepts. We intend to do some public outreach before that time. That'll include Stephanie making press releases and information on the borough website, but also door hangers for individuals along the East and Bedford Street corridor, alerting them to the upcoming meeting and the topic of the meeting. So hopefully we'll have a little bit more presence at that meeting and a little bit more time for a more thorough discussion.
Great, thank you, Mark. Does anybody have any questions? Okay, thank you. Next is zoning reform, and I know that's all you, Jared.
That's me. I just have a quick presentation. This is mostly for my notes. It's nothing too fancy. I do like to keep a running list of the accomplishments that council's made so far. We have 3 items to sort of report out tonight. Group homes didn't make the list. We still had some public feedback to evaluate before we're ready to report out the council on group homes, but I do have some things to share for the other 3 items. So shared parking, as council's aware, we have a public hearing at your meeting on the 14th. That's to expand access to shared parking where context is appropriate. As for the benefit of the public, shared parking lots are currently allowed in the borough zoning ordinance up to 300 feet between the land use and the parking. The recommendation is to expand that from 300 to 1,500 feet for commercial districts, urban mixed use, and a couple of the residential districts in urban contexts, again, where it's more walkable and we can anticipate that parking demand isn't going to be too problematic. Next. Fee in lieu of parking. I'm pretty sure we're close on this one. It's a little bit challenging in the state of Pennsylvania and maybe some other places to do this in a way that it you know, it's going to make the solicitor happy, that it's going to work for Borough Council, and it's going to be obvious and predictable for the residents that live here. The idea with fee in lieu of parking, as the council's been briefed, is to sort of establish a fee that would sort of go towards construction, a little bit of maintenance of a parking space, that a developer could potentially ask council to pay into a fund, the parking fund, rather than establishing that on-site parking. We're comfortable with the fee that we set up. It's based on some methodology that's been used elsewhere, and it's got Carlisle's own little flavor. But what we've added, again, to make this more predictable for neighbors, is a requirement for a 200-foot abutter notification. We're not adding additional meetings or even a public hearing, but we think the benefit of having that 200-foot mailer where the fee in lieu is proposed would make it a little bit more obvious to the neighbors. It would give them the opportunity to submit questions and comments to staff so that we could potentially evaluate things for the benefit of the council before the council meeting. There's no additional meetings baked into the draft recommendation right now. It would just sort of add this additional layer of awareness. The last item, if you recall, I sort of struck out the text from that the solicitor prepared. I was politely admonished for that move, but not really, all in good fun. The zoning permit was a suitable alternative to recording the Borough Council's decision to accept a fee in lieu of parking by the Borough Solicitor. And if you recall, there was a reference to the special exception standard where you'd have to sort of set aside some parking, some land for parking at a future date. If it was determined by the borough engineer or the borough zoning officer, the parking would be warranted. That's deleted. That's a special exception process. So the process now would be an applicant would submit a zoning permit application to the staff, prompting our review of this fee in lieu of parking. The staff would deliver the recommendation to Borough Council after the notification took place, and Council would then have the opportunity to evaluate the conditions that are presented in the application. They'd have the chance to look at whatever evaluation they want to determine if it's a suitable ask, and once approved, the zoning officer would then have the burden of sort of a pro forma zoning permit approval. So once council approves the request, the zoning officer signs off on the zoning permit, and then we keep that document on file. And that's a little different than having the applicant have to go to the county and go through the process of recording something formal that gets attached and runs with the land. And it also keeps a decent record for the borough that this occurred. Accessory dwelling units. Oh, this has been sort of a fun challenge, I think, for staff, and I think the Land Use Reform Committee's enjoying the process, although it is a little bit cerebral. Like, we have to really think about what we're doing. Accessory dwelling units, if you recall, the initial recommendation was to add a provision where a landowner that has an existing dwelling established on their property would not have the burden of calculating a density limitation on their property if they wanted to establish a modest subordinate accessory dwelling unit. And the benefit of that ADU is it increases the borough's housing stock, potentially reducing local costs for housing, and it adds a possible source of revenue for people that want to collect rent for a modest dwelling. It also adds to some of your, sort of living in place securities that sort of go along with that added revenue. So it's a nice intervention that doesn't change the context of neighborhoods, because you're still limited by the dimensional requirements within any zoning district. So if the zoning district says that you have to have a certain percentage of your lot remain green space, then you have to do that for ADUs. There's no additional lot coverage that's allowed for this. All that ADUs provisions would allow you to do is not considered density. Because this stuff is a little bit challenging to understand, the staff went ahead and assigned a homework assignment to the Land Use Reform Subcommittee. And that's kind of hit or miss with volunteer committees, but it went well. I asked the committee to pick 1 to 3 different properties. It could be in their neighborhood, it could be their own home, it could be some place that they observed within the community that they thought, well, this could be kind of unique or weird, we should evaluate it. Submit the address to staff, and we take a look at it. And we'd sanitize every one of the lots that people looked at, so nobody'd know which address we were looking at, whose property it was, none of that stuff. We're just going to look at the dimensions and the context. So I got everybody's addresses. I read through all of their very thoughtful notes about the draft standards that we put together and how they might apply and how they could be confusing for people that wanted to use this standard. And I sort of traced the lot boundaries using the tax map and an aerial photo. I traced the lot boundaries, the buildings on the property just as a footprint, and the driveway. Nothing else. So it's sort of this black and white building footprint on a lot. And then I did the physical calculation. So if it says, you can only have 40% of the lot covered, I would look at how much existing lot coverage was there and how much could be expanded for an accessory dwelling unit. Or if they were already limited and would have to do a renovation in the existing buildings to accommodate an ADU. And we kind of went from there. I think we got probably a dozen different concepts within the community to look at. And we had 2 meetings of, I think, very thoughtful discussion about how the standards are working or maybe not working. I think we're trending in a positive direction, but we still need to look at design. Again, as I've said before, one of the nice benefits of an accessory dwelling unit is you add that housing stock and that additional gentle density without changing neighborhood context. We're going to sort of look at if somebody was to do an accessory dwelling unit in an outbuilding, or if they were to add a separate entrance that wasn't originally on an existing principal building. What does that look like? What does the land use reform committee have concerns about? What are they not concerned about? And this group is really sort of helpful to staff because we can sort of evaluate these things without having it fleshed out, sort of half-baked in front of council at these public meetings. And it really gives me some good direction to go in terms of blind spots and things that maybe I've missed. That's where we're at with ADUs. And we still meet just about every 2 weeks and consider things. So with that said, any questions?
Mark, that's okay. Hold on just a second, Mark. Any questions from council?
I don't have a question. I just want to reiterate my concern about the accessory dwelling unit. I mean, I know that the impetus is to increase the housing stock in Carlisle, which I know we need to do. I mean, I'll be the first to tell you that. But I do have concerns that most of them would be created to be short-term rentals, and that doesn't really help what we're looking at. So it doesn't sort of change your calculus in terms of designing the ordinance or anything, but I'm wondering if we can consider somehow putting some restrictions in place on limiting the number of properties that could be, I don't know, converted into short-term dwelling. So
Okay, I think that's an important consideration. One of the early memos that I put out was to maybe add this into the rental program. We don't currently regulate short-term rentals. I know the county's looking at evaluating how much of the housing stock has already been converted to short-term rentals. They have some software that they want to purchase to sort of scrub the web so that we know what that looks like. Regardless, the tricky part about zoning with grandfathered uses or established nonconformities is establishing if it's a legally existing nonconformity or if it's an illegal nonconformity. These short-term rentals, they're probably peppered throughout the borough. I mean, I'm not ignorant of that. I don't think the council is. But knowing exactly which ones were there before zoning was established and which ones were there after is the tricky part. With the rental program, the benefit to that is that it's a license. The council's all aware of this. We're able to sort of look at the safety of existing apartments and issue an occupancy permit if they met our minimum requirements. I think we could do the same thing with accessory dwelling units that are short-term rentals.
Any other questions? Okay, Buck, did you have a question?
So, what about trash and water bill?
That's another thing that we have to evaluate. I mean, the trash program sort of is what it is. It doesn't look at accessory dwelling units. We look at established dwelling units, and then we kind of go from there. This would have to be baked into that so that we had a predictable, idea of who's eligible to participate in the program, right? And who we should be collecting that utility bill from. So that's part of this. And I think the same goes for the other part of your question, unless I missed. Yeah.
There's some really cruel enforcement measures for this trash and water bill. The bill's not paid, and there's water shut off. You're really putting a burden on the citizens to bundle these expenses. And now you're talking about APQs. So, there's a lot of Uber intent there. I see a lot of deliveries. People are really trash funding. Something like you want snack, my trash now. Trash bill on. So now, you have another different, right? You have to get these people on. I don't know what they'll do. I agree. Of course, they have the neighbors too, so I guess that would be my neighbor. I can look at it. But just so cumbersome, so expensive, and so outrageous. I mean, we all need a place to live. I'm not about forcing people out of homes. And I'm behind me in very little space. So I like the idea of ADU. I have people behind my backyard making it trackable. And it seems to be okay. It's okay for me. I'd rather see that than somebody walking on the street.
Okay, thanks, Buck. Any other questions? Okay. Any other follow-up from council before we move on? Jared, do you have anything else you want to share? Okay. Then we'll move on to, I have nothing under my report. Public Works, Mr. Stubbe.
Thanks. I have one item this evening. I move that Borough Council agree to participate in the 2024 through 2028 Cumberland County Local Bridge Inspection Program by authorizing the mayor and manager to sign the county's enrollment form.
Councilor Stubbe makes a motion to participate in the 2024-2028 Cumberland County Local Bridge Inspection Program. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Hicks. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed saying nay. The motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Stubbe. Sustainability and Community Planning Committee, Mr. Hicks.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple of items. I think Jared will cover both of them. First is on climate pollution reduction grant, and the second is the Pennsylvania Walk Works. But Jared, floor is yours.
So the climate pollution reduction grant, this was sort of brought to my attention by Councillor Hicks, and I will say Councillor Hicks has done a lot of additional work in sort of bridging the gap in understanding with some of these grant programs. They're so convoluted, and I don't mind saying that on television. You know, it's like they're really confusing. So having Councillor Hicks kind of evaluate some of these things has been pretty helpful. We've made it onto sort of a project list. I won't get into too many details about this, but suffice it to say that the DEP is aware of Carlisle's climate action plan and a handful of our goals. One of the items that we're thinking about pursuing is a grant amount of $5 to $10 million, depending on if Carlisle decides to partner with Harrisburg, and we are talking to Harrisburg, to administer energy efficiency money through this grant to residents of Carlisle to sort of replace inefficient heating and cooling systems and add insulation or other facilities is going to sort of bring that energy demand down. And this would sort of apply to residential and commercial structures. We're working with Delta Development Group. That's the group that kind of helps us out with advocacy and grant applications. We're meeting with them. We're also meeting with Wilson Engineering. The connection to Wilson Engineering is, again, a little bit convoluted, but there's a program that the state has with us, the Shared Energy Manager Program, where basically, and Councillor Hicks can probably explain this a lot better than I can, the borough was added to a list of communities that would have the benefit of working with an engineering firm to help us meet our climate action goals. We don't pay for this service. It's provided because we made it onto this list. So Wilson Engineering is helping us and Delta put together a project proposal for this climate pollution reduction grant that's due, I think it's April 1st. So fast approaching. For the nonprofits that are watching this, I don't envy you. Grant season is it's a burden. The climate pollution reduction grant, if we get it, again, if it's just Carlisle, we'd be going for $5 million to administer locally. If we partner with Harrisburg, we'd bump the number up to 10. We're allowed to include consulting services to help us administer the grant, evaluate applications. We'd certainly want to consider that either on staff or with a third party, but the funds to help with that would be included in the grant application. So I'll pause there before we go on to the other.
Any questions about the grant program? Go ahead, Councilor
Just
Ball.
a question about math. So if we partner with Harrisburg, will we still get $5 million? I mean, will we split that 50-50, or would we end up proportionally getting less than Harrisburg because they have more residents?
Yeah, we're going to try to split it right down the middle. That's where we're at. Councilor Hicks, am I wrong?
That's accurate. That keeps us still at the lowest tier, which would, I think, make us more competitive. Just to be clear why we're teaming up, especially if we're submitting the grant, is it's explicit that the chances of getting a grant approved is if you partner with another municipality. We have a relationship. I had a relationship with Harrisburg, having done their greenhouse gas, same group that briefed us did Harrisburg's inventory, so they have all of the prerequisites, so they're ready to go. So that's the main justification. Just to kind of also put that in perspective, we fell just below the threshold of basically being able to run our own program because we're the 4th largest metropolitan area in Pennsylvania. Because the other 3 applied and were accepted, they are managing their own grant themselves. So we were at the top of the bottom of the list, and I think by including Harrisburg, and I think DEP would concur, that really improves our chances of getting the funds. And the other thing I'll just mention, $5 million sounds like a lot. It's really not a lot for the types of things we need to do, and it's a 5-year program, so we're going to have plenty of time, I believe, to do. I think the main factors of the success of the program is going to be how well we can communicate, do outreach. I think we're going to have ample time to do those things, so I'm optimistic that if we're fortunate to get this, we have a rare maybe opportunity to do some very difficult goals in our climate action plan, is really helping the private sector, commercial residential buildings improve their energy efficiency. So, Jared pretty much, I think, hit all the big items. They're working hard. We're meeting weekly to make sure we can submit the best proposals possible.
Any other questions? Okay. Thanks, Jared. You can roll on.
Sure. Okay. The next one's Pennsylvania Walkworks. So we submitted a Walkworks application last year. We were unsuccessful. We since had a meeting with the administrator of the grant, Samantha, I can't remember your last name, but Samantha. She came to Carlisle. She walked around with us to different sites in the borough to see kind of the context, see what we're working with, some of the new facilities we put in for, traffic calming and safety, and was sort of encouraged with what we're trying to do here, but also let us know that we didn't put together the greatest application, and gave us some tips on how we could fix that. The staff feel pretty confident we could be successful with another grant application this year, but so you're aware, it's not a lot of money for what we're going to try to do. They have several tiers for the Walkworks grant, and to sort of qualify for the no match, which is what we're going to try to do, it's a cap of $35,000 for no match. And Walkworks can be used for new facilities, but what we are sort of thinking about doing is trying to advance the Vision Zero resolution, and sort of trying to help with that planning process. The no match is sort of limited to the census tracts within the borough that have sort of environmental justice issues, and there's sort of two. There's minutia. Never mind. There's a pretty good chunk of the borough that would qualify for the no match, but it's not the entire borough. Suffice it to say that the less dense parts of the borough don't qualify. The more dense areas and the places with sort of industrial and office out to the west parts of the borough do qualify. So we can pretty much qualify for the core of the borough all the way out to the east and west boundaries, but we'd have to leave out some of the less dense places to qualify. That's still a pretty good chunk of the borough to advance some Vision Zero planning. We're not sure if $35,000 is enough to get us a decent plan, but it could get us a planning area and some of the elements covered for that amount of money. So we're going to try to refine the scope for that Vision Zero effort and submit something by the end of the month. And to that, it's not on the agenda, but I have talked to staff a little bit about it. As far as the bike ped safety stuff, staff also attended a Safe Streets and Roads for All meeting with Tri-County Regional Planning Commission today, and we do that monthly. There's a bucket of money for pilot demonstrations in planning. And it looks like we might be able to do some, temporary type projects with money from the SS4A program, and that could include, paint for bike lanes and, some different types of interventions that are more temporary to increase conspicuity, things like that. But there's a pretty good amount of money in there that the borough would qualify. I bring it up tonight because that turnaround is also pretty quick. The first submission deadline's April 4th, I think. There are subsequent submission dates that we could maybe qualify for, but in this meeting, which is attended by several of the municipalities in the region, the idea of trying some temporary projects in known crash locations, places where we have some issues, resonated with a lot of the different, community partners in attendance. And there might be a chance to maybe work with them or come up with a list of potential demonstration projects just for Carlisle to submit, for funds. The trick with that one is it's an 80-20 match. So, and it's one of these deals where you have to sort of get reimbursed for your costs after you spent the money. So we'd have to be kind of careful about how that looks in the budget, but it could be another opportunity that's another fast turnaround.
Any questions? Yep. Okay. Then there is.
No. That concludes my.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. I thought I saw sort of a no. Wait. And Jack, you're still with us too, right?
I am, yes.
Okay. I didn't want to forget you. There is no new business on the agenda. Is there any further public comment this evening? I see none. Is there any by Zoom? Then, you're too late, Buck. No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead. Go ahead.
The retaining seats are a lot better than pouring concrete. I heard somebody today at the Harrisburg transportation, whatever you say, saying how it's very expensive to remove concrete, and it looks like we're pouring an awful lot of it. And it seems as though we can benefit by trying some of these things that you want to do with paint. Before we put high-rise curving and roundabouts and things, we might continue jumping or too late. But that's a great idea. Thanks very much.
Okay, thank you, Bob. Hearing nothing further, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.